Buenas tardes, senadores and senadoras. I hope you had a good lunch and welcome back to the Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole is now back in session. So we are now on the second round, and I will start once again with the Chairman on Education, Senator Borja. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess the only other question I have aside from, or not aside from, but from my previous questions is, I know tuition is the big concern that we have in regards to the future in funding and ensuring that you guys have the resources. And when we look at, even possible legislation that or anything within our legislation that prohibits you guys, I really need to understand, because I've done my research in regards to how that may affect accreditation, but if you can explain and just kind of provide some supporting facts as to how that's going to, should we add something like that to the legislation, restricting a tuition increase, how that affects accreditation?
Thank you very much, Senator Borja, for that question. One of the major areas of review by the Washington Senior College and University Commission is the university's financial sustainability. It takes a look at our strategic plan, it takes a look at our financial management plan, it takes a look at how are we balancing supporting the various areas under accreditation priorities such as quality of learning, program review, support services for students, facilities upkeep, as well as financial sustainability, how we're addressing our advancement efforts with regard to fundraising, with regard to alumni engagement, and so forth. So having the flexibility over our revenues, one of which is tuition, revenue, and fees. To be able to have that flexibility, but also take into consideration, one of the important priorities of the university is college affordability. College affordability is represented in ensuring that students can afford to go to college. We take a look at different factors. We take a look at the levels of financial aid through Pell Grants, through the availability of federal student loans, but we try to keep that as low as possible, through the availability and promotion of additional private scholarships, through the availability of the funding through the Student Financial Assistance program that is part of our local appropriation through the legislature, and to ensure overall that students can afford to what we call persist. And persisting in one's degree path is to make sure that they don't stop out. Stop out is a term equivalent to dropout in the K-12 system. Stop out is what we use in higher education, is a recognized term. So one of our priorities within our strategic enrollment management plan is to ensure that we keep students on the pathway. And so financial capability is a big factor. We study how the levels of students who are under bursar holds. The bursar office is within the accounting business office, and it has to do with students who owe funds, uncollected tuition and fees for the current and the prior semesters. We try to work with those students and as much as possible take into consideration how much of the composition of our students are dependent on Pell Grant, how much of them are dependent on student loans, how much of them are at risk of stopping out. We take those matters very seriously with regard to whether or not we're going to implement a tuition adjustment. And so as the cost of inflation rises, as our operational expenses rise or increase because of other factors beyond our control, we have to be able to rely on tuition and fees as one of those important revenue sources on our overall financial health. So what the accreditors look at is how the university is able to balance its financial sustainability. And so being able to have that flexibility, because tuition and fees are essentially approved by the University's Board of Regents. And so there's a lot of vetting that goes through that. We do have a student affairs, scholarship, alumni relations, and honorary degree committee of the Board of Regents. The Student Government Association is part of the governing process. Of course, they have an opportunity to chime in, and students never want any kind of student or tuition or fee adjustment, rightfully so. But college affordability remains a top priority, and that's one of the factors that that our accreditors look at with regard to how do we manage that. But it means taking a look at how we manage all other levers and all other expenditures at the University of Guam.
Thank you. You know, as I was, for the lunch, I was looking at the just the understanding of WAS and the accreditation, and then the autonomy, the financial autonomy. And just, and again, if I'm wrong, correct me. My understanding in why that's important to accreditation is that the university needs to have the ability to make the financial decisions that are going to be in the best interest of maintaining accreditation status. So based on your experience or expertise, maybe Dr. Charlene Sanchez-Baba, if we were to implement a no tuition increase, but not a justification, but if we were to provide a funding to support what that tuition increase would be, so if we said, no tuition increases, but the legislature will provide, or subsidize that through legislation, would that still, would that affect accreditation? I guess is my question. Do you understand my question? I know it was everywhere.
Thank you for that. We have to be able to demonstrate financial sustainability. And we can hold off on any kind of tuition adjustment. There are fees, however, associated with specific programs, such as engineering. Running an engineering program, running an engineering school is expensive. We have over 200 majors in the School of Engineering, but there are required lab types of resources that require the cost to be shouldered by the students in the form of course or program fees. The same goes with the nursing program. It is also an expensive program to run. And so I know that there could be another source of funding outside of the general fund that could support those particular types of programs that are directly related to the workforce, that require not only being able to compensate hard-to-hire professional faculty, such as engineering faculty and nursing faculty, but also the corresponding higher costs of running those programs. And so we're looking at both engineering and nursing being imposed a program fee, which the programs desperately need, and we're trying to find an alternative source of funds so that the students don't have to bear those fees. We haven't implemented those fees, but they are necessary because we don't have the current funding source for them. If there's another source of funds that are outside of the general fund that can support that, absolutely, and that could at least help to defray, part of what continues to be a shortfall in terms of supporting our staffing pattern.
Thank you for that, Dr. Enriquez. Those are all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Sijus Masi, Senator Borja. This time the Vice Chair, Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I really don't have any questions at this time, and I'll go ahead and yield back to you until we go to round 3 for the bill itself. Thank you.
Sijus Masi, Madam Vice Chair. Senator Joe Shimazu, San Agustin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions. I'm just waiting to vote on the bill and get it passed. Let's get UOG back on his feet. Thank you.
Sounds like a plan. Vice Speaker Ada, please proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps this for UOG. Would this appropriation be a one-time appropriation, or will UOG be increasing their future annual budget request by this same amount or similar amount?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Speaker. Our FY 2026 budget request, which we will be discussing with the Office of Finance and Budget next week, almost mirrors what we were asking for this fiscal year. We do recognize the challenge of having to fund something based on the level of requests that the university has been putting forward. We are going to make every possible effort to try to decrease that amount through our cost efficiencies and deficit reduction task force, along with our revenue enhancement task force. So we recognize the challenge that this legislature continues to experience every single budget cycle, and we want to do our part to be part of that solution and to be able to be given that opportunity. This request is strictly for this FY 2025. The FY 2026 budget request will look a bit different because we would have implemented some of these different recommendations from the task force. We also have a report coming out from Liaison, which is a consultant that's been tasked to help us take a look at enrollment planning, enrollment growth, advancement, fundraising, how to right fit everything. And with it comes recommendations that will help us bring in additional funds, which we are very excited about, and that will help somehow make the types of adjustments that are long overdue and expected from our senators so that we can do what we can. So we just want to have that flexibility to make the corresponding adjustments, and what with the Trump administration, the federal landscape, to not bind our hands with whatever levers that we have to balance so that we can continue to sustain the SACMEN of the University of Guam and to sustain its core mission.
Okay, thank you for that, Madam President. Mr. Chair, that was the only question I had.
Si Jusmasi, Vice Speaker. Senator Calvo.
I actually have no further question or remark. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Calvo. I mean, I appreciate the promotion, but it might be a problem for Senator Frank, Speaker. Thank you very much, Senator Calvo. Senator Teletatigui.
Si Jusmasi, Mr. Speaker. See, Lynette, I'm doing it. Mr. Chair. Can you explain what the Guam Extension Service grant is about? It's a federal fund.
Madam
grant.
Speaker, you're referring to
no,
the University
I'm
of Guam
Senator.
I'm sorry, Madam Senator.
We're all speakers today. That's okay. Join in the party. Let's call each other speakers, okay?
Dispensa.
Is that okay, Mr. Speaker?
Dispensa.
It's
Well,
okay. We're all learning.
Yes.
This week has been such a
Yeah.
learning adjustment to us all,
Yeah,
so
yes.
trust me.
Thank you. So thank you, Madam Senator. The University of Guam Cooperative Extension Service really represents our land grant mission of the University of Guam. The funding comes from the USDA NEFA, to which the Smith Lever and Hatch funding pays for about 45% of extension faculty's salaries. And that essentially provides a savings to Gov Guam and to the university of I think that's approximately
4.2 million.
Yeah, it's about $1.7 million match to pay for those extension faculty.
Was this no longer available anymore? Did they not? Because I read through a media article that it's
still
no longer.
it's still there. It's still there because of our land grant mission. That hasn't changed.
So what funds have been frozen at the University of Guam?
What funds have not
From
been
on the federal side, what grants have been frozen so
have
far?
been frozen?
Yeah.
I know that there are grants frozen from the National Institute of Health, those that have to do with minority health research. Obviously, there are a lot of grants under the National Institute of Health that have been impacted. Any grants that have to do with minority serving, obviously, climate justice, climate resilience, those type of grants have been impacted. Those are primarily research-related grants.
What about the Sea Grant?
The Sea Grant is still intact, to our knowledge.
Okay, do you know of any of these grants that are in jeopardy?
Not the Sea Grant and not the cooperative extension funding.
Now, what happens for the University of Guam if these funds are now, frozen or no longer available? And how are you going to adjust as far as well, in the newspaper, I remember reading something about how certain professors are no longer have their grants to be able to cover their salaries or those of their staff.
Yeah.
So I guess they have to be let go, or what's the plan in that situation?
Thank you for that question. The faculty salaries are fixed. When they engage in extracurricular research grants that are outside the scope of their regular duties and responsibilities, those bring extra research grant dollars. And so they may be paid as a principal investigator a certain amount. It's not a lot of money, and they may be permitted to hire research assistants for those and pay for other purposes for the scope. If the grants are frozen, if they're eliminated, if they're paused, then these particular professors have already been instructed to pause any kind of spending related to them. If there are employees, we've tried to find other parts of the unit, other places at the university where we can try to preserve them. We do have enough funds for one additional payroll for those particular employees, but remember, those employees that are not at risk are the faculty who are already being paid under the local appropriation.
So it's kind of like, sounds almost like we're talking about the Guam Memorial Hospital, where these doctors are getting paid a set salary, and then they're getting paid another salary on top of that for having to do another project.
It's very, I mean, there's a huge difference in terms of the amount. What they do get is just for the additional time and effort that they put in, which can amount to maybe up to 10 hours for the week, but it's really for the additional time and effort beyond their standard working hours to carry out the scope of the grant.
Okay, and that is all calculated with and monitored.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Showing
Yes.
the hours that they put in to make that extra.
Absolutely. That all has to go through a prior approval process, account for the time and effort worksheets. So those are all monitored, yes.
So again, what's going to happen if some of these grants are frozen, and some of them that actually do pay for the stipends and the salaries for some of these people that were hired at the University of Guam?
Yeah, so there's immediate monitoring and notification to those who oversee those research grant funded programs. We call them principal investigators. There is an immediate memorandum that goes out to anyone affected by that grant that's been affected. And so the employees are well aware of what it is they need to do. To the administrators of the grant, which are usually the faculty, they are instructed to pause, like spending related to the grant.
Some of the federal funds that may not go any longer to the University of Guam is helping those individual students for their tuitions, So what is happening there, and can
the only area that we were certainly very concerned about were Pell Grants and federal student loans. We've had at least 2 virtual conversations with the legislative assistant from Congressman Moylan's office about that very issue. Currently, we know that with the dismantling or closure of the U.S. Department of Education, that the federal student loans will be moved to the U.S. Small Business Administration. Pell Grant may be moved to the state level or to the island of Guam. We don't know where that's going to land, but as far as we know, there is really no risk to Pell Grant, at least as far as we know. With regard to the federal student loan, I know there's an accountability issue, a formula type of discussion within the Committee on Education and Workforce, taking a look at the postgraduate earnings of the students who complete their degree programs and comparing that figure to the cumulative amount of federal student loans that they have incurred. So for example, if the accumulated student loan is $100,000, and the average 3 years salary after a student receives their degree is $30,000 or $35,000, then it raises a red flag with regard to the ability for that student or that graduate to be able to repay a $100,000 debt without interest. So that's the accountability measure that's being considered in the conversations within this particular committee. And we continue to monitor that. We ask for regular updates on that because at the end of the day, it impacts college affordability.
What is the next generation diverse food? It's from food and agriculture, I guess, the next generation of,
Yeah, the 29. Yeah. Oh,
of
yes.
diverse food and agriculture. What grant is that? Did you receive it, and are you going to be getting funds from that?
Yeah, let me allow Dr. Santos Bamba to respond.
So yes, that particular grant actually is very unfortunate that it was paused or taken away. I believe that one was approximately $2 million, which meant that student internships and scholarships for students were no more. Specific to the STEM area, and that particular grant fund was brought by some faculty members in the College of Natural and Applied Sciences. So at best, right, we try to ensure that students who were earmarked to receive those funds, we try to connect them with the financial aid office to see how else we can get them some assistance, financial assistance. But I think even more so, what we were saddened by is the inability for these students to gain internship experience, which is direct workforce experience so that when they graduate, they can be connected with an employer. So, you know, it's things like that. It's not just necessarily the funding that goes into students' pockets, but the experiences that are established as a result of those grants. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and this is something that really works. Like GCC, for instance. By the way, the Manpower Development Fund actually is part of their budget. So they and again, they didn't receive anything higher than what they got the previous year, and it does include that. But there's going to come a situation, though. There's going to be a situation where some of these other areas are going to be frozen, and these students need the assistance. And you're going to have to make those changes and live within your means. And if it means, you know, to less, you know, professors over at the University of Guam, then it needs to be done. If you need to think outside the box, I remember, Anita, I supported you in your endeavor to be the president, and you assured me that you're going to live within our means, you're going to think outside the box and find ways to make this work. Now, we're going down a road that we're already being jeopardized on federal funds, but also even our economy right now in Guam, with the amount of tourists that we're not getting anymore, we're relying on military buildup. We don't know how long this is going to go, and we have to learn to live within our means. So some people are saying that the University of Guam is top-heavy, that you get all these professors making so much money. And then when it comes to providing services for our students, stipends to help them, you know, like the Next Generation grant that was given out, that's such a great project. I mean, I don't want to see any of this money being, you know, subsidizing federal grants, but I would like to see certain programs within the University of Guam that will continue to provide the students' needs. It's the students' needs. So, and I'm just hoping tuition, you know, not going up. I mean, you said earlier that, I mean, a resolution was passed, 24-27. I mean, as soon as we gave you some funding, I believe in 2021 or 22, that you could not raise the tuition. I mean, no sooner than the next day that 1 year was up, you increased the tuition really quick. So I don't think any of us want to see that happen. And I think, you know, the sentiments of the public out there, I mean, I was reading the paper and then looking at all the comments that were being made. University of Guam is not living within its means. So I hope that you can give me that you promised me a few years ago about thinking outside of the box. Because I don't know if we're going to have this funding for the University of Guam next year to keep providing additional increase like we did from 3 million to 6 million this year, and what's it going to be in FY26? I don't think it's going to be an increase. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Cedars Masi, Senator. You good with it? Okay. Now go to Senator Will Parkinson.
At this time, I don't really have any questions, but if anybody wants to call me speaker, feel free. This is your moment. With that, I yield the rest of my time, sir.
Yes, we need that humor today. Will the real speaker please stand up? Speaker Frank Blas Jr., you are recognized at this time.
I enjoy the humor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the information that I had asked for in the first round. And interesting thing is just go over some of the numbers that are here. I guess these numbers basically represent the amount necessary to fulfill payroll for 4 pay periods. Am I reading this right?
Yes, sir.
That amount here is $4,358,298. Yet you're asking this is 4 million, but no, what it comes out to for the 4 pay periods is actually $4,457,760. There's a delta of about $99,462. Can you explain that?
Thank you so much for that question. So there is a bit of a plug just because the amount that was already in the bill was 5.7. So in the event, again, these are estimates, right? So these total figures on the column there were what we had submitted during the deliberation of a FY 2025 budget request. And so we've been doing our best to keep everything kind of in line so there isn't confusion. So the $99,000 difference is really trying to fit into the 5.75. So again, we went from 12.2 down to 5.7, but the premise of all of this really is we're requesting from this body the remaining funds to get us through this fiscal year for all of our fixed costs, which are personnel, and then of course like the utilities and our fixed contracts and things of that sort.
So what was your allocation, your budget allocation for this fiscal year total?
For operations, it was 34.2, but of the 34.2, 1.6 is going to the Guam Cultural Repository.
So that left you with
about 32.2, if I'm not mistaken.
32.4?
Yes.
And of the 32.4, you needed 28.9 to be able to make payroll?
Not for, so this is, these are the areas tied directly to accreditation related priorities. There are also other, there's a full staffing pattern that was submitted with our budget request that included other areas as well. So if we looked at everything in totality for personnel, warm body personnel, we were at about 44 million, which far exceeds our appropriation. But then the other half, again, levers were tuition, and then we had the federal match as well. So we took all of that into consideration at the beginning of the fiscal year, and the difference, the delta that or the shortfall that we have, without considering all of these other types of projects that we wanted to do with Tilis Motna, with IT modernization, with things related to faculty adjustments, it was 5.75 million to cover our fixed cost for the full fiscal year.
Okay. I don't mean to be critical, okay? But, you know, we went through this exercise, and let me just go ahead and tee it up this way. How much of this money, how much of this 28,975, or of your $44 million in your total personnel costs Had you not received your 22% and all the other pay raises that you gave yourselves in the last 3 years, what would that number have been?
So when we were going through the exercise of the 22%, I believe for the adjustment, it was about 2.2 million, 2.1 million, and then for the faculty, it was 3.6.
3.6.
So that's about $5 million that we're.
Oh, it's just
yeah,
very
so
close to the
2
$5 million we're talking about here. And again, I don't want to mean critical,
It's okay.
but one of the things that I had warned people about 2 years ago was being able to carry your operations. Will your operations be sustained if you were to implement the pay raises? I received assurances all the way around. This body received assurances from almost every agency. We can cover it. And we're here today. Okay? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker. Senator Gumatauto, please proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon again. Yes, smile, it's not that bad. It could be worse. I'm going to double back. So in the fall, enrollment was about 2,172, right? Fall enrollment from the last semester. What's the current enrollment today? It went up, but what's the number? Yes,
It's currently 2974 for this, right?
Okay.
Yeah, this semester.
Okay. Can I ask, I'm going to go back to the discussion about federal loans. How many federal student loan borrowers are you tracking from the University of Guam that have went to UOG, and how many are currently paying off a student loan?
I'm sorry, 1 second.
No problem.
We don't have that figure readily available. Can we circle back?
Sure.
Rachel will just.
Because this is going to be important. What I was going to ask next was when we find out how many borrowers there are, and what was the average federal student loan that was borrowed by a UOG student. What's their average that they would owe?
I can speak a little. I don't have the exact numbers, Senator, but I know that in a meeting that we had with the congressman's staffer, the question about financial aid came up, and specifically about the loans. Our financial aid director, Mark Duarte, had shared that we weren't too concerned about the loans because our students, undergraduate students, didn't really take out very many loans. It was at the graduate level that we had more concerns with regard to that. But we can get those figures to you. I can tell you that at the undergraduate level, I want to say it's under 100,000 at this point.
Yeah, and so that was going to be my next question. Well, what was the typical loan size? And why I'm asking is that when we think about student loan payments, right, for the University of Guam students, and they're going to be looking for jobs when they leave. And I think, and when I see many of my former students, I just ask them, are you still working, or are you working? Some of them are not, I'm not going to say what we would call them, but they're broke and take another three-letter word after it. They could be that kind of student, but they're now graduates. I think my question, or why I'm asking this, is that there is a direct impact on the ability for those who graduate from the University of Guam and their ability to pay back those student loans. And so that has a bigger effect on our economy when they're unable. First off, they might have a hard time finding a job, but they won't be making those payments. And so I guess that was my concern is, when you say 100,000, if you're looking at it, if we're averaging, let's say 2,100 students, you might have a couple hundred college graduates. If they're averaging $100,000 in financial aid, or sorry, in loan payments, that's a lot of money that's not going back into the economy right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have the percentage of students who are, who have student loans, but I don't have the actual numbers.
Okay.
17% as of our 2023-2024 year. The total award amount for that year was $2.7 million. But for the, actually, I'm sorry, spring of 24, it's 1.4 million. Again, 17% of the student body, spring 2024 is $1.4 million. We do have in place a financial literacy advisement specialist that works with students. We are very mindful of the need to bring down the federal student loan default rate. That is a piece of data that our accreditors look at. And the reason why that's important is they want to make sure that that federal student loan default rate is low. We're proud to say that we're lower than the national average. It's not even double digits, which means that students as a whole, because most of them tend to be graduate students, they're already employed. We looked at the postgraduate income based on a postgraduate survey of recent graduates. The average annual income is $45,000. We have implemented, or rather mandated, internships for every single degree program, recognizing that we need to get these folks job ready or career ready, and recognizing that there's a need to ensure that they are able to be employable, even though they may be graduate degree bound, at least to ensure that they have something in a pipeline that is going to provide them with the necessary livelihood to move forward. We are very much aware of the concerns from the Education and Workforce Committee under the Trump administration and the return on investment of a university education, the cost of tuition, the cost of fees, the total cost of the academic degree program, and how that compares to postgraduate annual earnings. So what we've been doing as well is linking our students, making them aware of these higher paying jobs, and linking them through internships with private employers, federal government employers, as well as NGOs. And so the students as a whole, we're recognizing that a number of them are earning above 50,000, some of them above 75,000, some of them six figures, and they're in their 20s. And so in effect, it links directly to middle class, building the middle class for our island. And so we like to think that through our financial literacy advisement support for our students, our college affordability priorities, the student internship mandate, and working with employers and industries to make sure that we link every possible opportunity for employment as well as internship for our students.
Doc, I think I'm in the wrong profession right now, based on what you just read or what you just said.
Okay.
I think we're all in the wrong profession.
Yeah. I have to say, it really amazes us when a student comes back and say, well, I just got offered a job at $75,000 and they're 23 years old. Or my son, who graduated from the university 4 years ago, is now making $95,000. And these are graduates who are here, not
Well,
off
I'm hoping
island.
that your son's have you living with him at this point, because I think it's getting harder for college graduates to take care of even themselves. Maybe they can take care of their moms and dads at some point.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, and that's where my whole thing is. I'm looking at the student loan side of the house, and in just thinking about its impacts down the road. When we think about the amount of money that, if you always say 17%, I mean, if you look at that, that might be somewhere a couple hundred, no more than probably 400 of your active students at any given time that might be on, that might have a loan.
Right, and just to let everyone know that most parents of high school graduates do not want their sons and daughters going into debt, and they're not as keen on pursuing a student loan avenue. And so we're finding that a very interesting phenomenon.
As
but-
a parent of 5 kids and 4, adults, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I have 2 that are paying off college debt right now. Not my debt, their debt.
Yeah.
Again, the impact of those UOG students onto the rest of the economy has me, just why I was asking that number. So, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to ask questions. Thanks again for being here and helping us out with this. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Si Masi, Senator Gumtato. Senator Barnett.
Si Masi, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask Dr. Wiegand, so just to refresh our colleagues' memories, we had previously successfully passed a freeze on tuition hikes 2 years ago when we entertained the 22% pay increase for UOG, and we attached that amendment as a condition of receiving the money. And as I had said earlier, you had issued a letter opposing it, and I'm still kind of hearing some of this narrative today that somehow the legislature putting strings to the money that we give you is an infringement on your independence or your accreditation, which I don't agree is the case. So has this situation changed at all, Doc? Or whoever?
Thank you, Senator Barnett. I serve on the WA Senior College and University Commission. I've been on the commission for 5 years. I represent the Pacific Basin region, and financial sustainability is a critical part. One of the major revenues is tuition and fees. A university degree, a University of Guam degree, speaks volumes with regard to quality. This is not a crackerjack university. It is not a crackerjack degree. I would hope that you would trust in the investment that is made on a student's degree program at the University of Guam, something that represents high brand name value, something that represents an investment into their education. When you do the math, a 5% adjustment on tuition represents, what, $11 more per credit. If you multiply that by 12 credit hours, what does that amount to? For an entire semester, an investment that is made. And I'll take you back when I was a student, a dropout, actually a stop out. I stopped out of college because I stopped to have a family. And so what motivated me to come back to school was I needed to improve upon my earning potential to elevate my family's livelihood. I took out a student loan because I was making minimum wage. Okay, I took out a student loan, but I recognized the investment being made in the degree. So I know you're hung up on this, freezing tuition,
Ma'am,
sir.
I'm not hung up on it. I just believe the University of Guam is to be student-centered, and I just also want to say that you keep referring to tuition increases and students as a lever that you can pull.
Okay,
And these students are not levers. Their families are not levers. Their pocketbooks are not levers. And again, ma'am, the question was, do you think that us barring a tuition increases somehow endangers accreditation? That was the question.
Now, endangered is a strong word, Mr. Senator.
It's the word that the University of Guam used the first time we passed a freeze on tuition hikes.
Well, endangered is your term.
So could
Let me
you
just clarify.
Does it impact accreditation?
It's going to be part of the equation, okay? It's going to be, and let me correct you with your recent post, okay? To make claims that we are going to start doubling the increase of tuition and creating fear among our students.
Doctor, please.
It's very irresponsible on your part.
I'm sorry, you're out of line. Mrs. Rachel had earlier in the morning talked about a proposed increase of 5% in the fall semester that would fundraise, or by pulling that lever, and to use your words, some $700,000 on the backs of the University of Guam students. She then said if we increase 5% in the subsequent semester, that would raise another $700,000.
Okay, we have the authorization.
And so that's what I was referencing. So Ms. Rachel very clearly shared plans to increase tuition, not once, but twice, with 2 5% increases. So I beg to differ. I am absolutely not incorrect. I was just merely repeating what you said on the record, ma'am. Or not you, your staff. That's all.
Let me correct you for the record. Posting something that is a misstatement is very irresponsible on your part.
Excuse me, Dr.
Yes.
Enriquez, I posted the comments that your staff made.
We have the authority. We have the
Absolutely,
authority to
yes. So
negate
when you
things.
share with this body that you plan on increasing tuition in the fall and then in the semester immediately following, I think I'm not out of line to speak freely as the people's elected voice to share your plans to increase tuition and pay for, who knows, raises, payroll on the backs of these students. So I actually, I disagree with your assertion that I'm somehow incorrect, and I also don't appreciate you attempting to correct me on the record when I'm merely repeating what your staff shared in this committee of the whole. I'm sitting right here.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Senator. Let me have
Are you going to answer
Rachel
the question, ma'am?
repeat. Endangering accreditation, endangered is a very strong word.
So the answer
It will
is no.
have an effect. It will have an effect on accreditation because financial sustainability is important.
Again,
The ability
I
for our board to be able to do its
Pull a
due
lever.
diligence, do its due diligence, Senator Barnett, with regard to managing financial sustainability.
I understand.
Yes,
I just,
and I
again,
will have Ms. Rachel.
I'll ask the questions here, ma'am. Thank you. So, Dr. Wiegand, after we recessed, you had shared with me that at the time that the UOG had come out and opposed the tuition, the bar on tuition increases, that had kind of been the mentality. But since then, legislatures across the country have done all kinds of things to put conditions on funding that's provided to universities. So again, I just reject completely this notion that we can't put conditions on the funding that we give you, because if you were autonomous, if you were independent, you would not be here sitting in front of us asking us for $5.7 million when Guam Department of Education couldn't even get an emergency session, when we have officers out there on the street who need money for equipment, but the appropriations chair said he's not going to entertain any appropriations unless there's a declaration of emergency from the speaker or the governor. So you should feel very privileged that you're here before this body asking for $5.7 million when every other agency in this government, from the Guam Memorial Hospital, Public Health, Guam Police Department, Guam Department of Education, are all stuck with their budgets. And that's where I'm coming from. I have nothing further, Mr. Chair. Si Dios masi.
Si Dios masi, Senator Barnett. For the record, the chairman on education, myself, OFB, BBMR, Department of Administration, all had a working session with Department of Education, whereby we recognized, and many senators, to include the Vice Speaker, whereby we recognized and talked to them about their current cash flow and cash position. They agreed that they would pursue right now reimbursements from the federal government.
I'm aware of this, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind you of
I know.
your remarks in the media, and I quote, "It would be irresponsible to spend in current year financials with unaudited financials." And you had I'm reading media article after media article, you referenced this in the open that just
That's
a week
correct.
ago, you said you weren't going to entertain any appropriations
That's
measures
correct.
barring an emergency declaration.
That's
And
correct,
that,
Senator.
yes.
And I opened this meeting, this committee of the whole,
Yes.
by stating that my commitment to this effort was because of the deletion of the $4 million in the supplemental budget that was a carryover from the 37th Guam Legislature.
I
Okay?
voted no on that budget.
And that's fine. And that's fine, Mr.
Point of information.
Yes.
There was no, and that amount was not budgeted, and there's no carryover from
It was
the
in a
previous
supplemental
year?
budget, Senator.
It wasn't in the supplemental budget that was passed.
It was in
It
the
was a
supplemental budget. It
proposal?
was deleted.
Yes,
It was
yeah.
deleted. It was
Well,
the
it was not
original bill.
passed.
Senator, I'm not going to argue with you. I have the right to make this point, okay? And the point is absolutely true that in the bill that was presented before this body, there was the $4 million. We walked into this hall in the 37th Guam Legislature, and a supplemental budget amendment was on the desk. Many of us agreed to pursue that because it was timely on the other appropriations. $20 million for education, $20 million for the hospital, $10 million for Department of Education, which they got in the supplemental budget. I know because I was here. So that's the truth. It was deleted from the bill that we were debating by putting down an amendment on the floor that didn't have it. So that is a carryover of the appropriation that fell in my opinion and in my judgment. And as the chair, I have that right.
You do, and I'm just saying, we're going to give $5.7 million to UOG. We can't even get them to commit that they're not going to increase tuition for our students. Meanwhile, the Guam Memorial Hospital is falling apart. What are we doing here?
That's your choice, Senator, how you're going to conduct yourself and how you're going to vote. That's fine. But I want to make sure that you cannot cast aspersions on my committee because
I'm
of the
not
fact-
casting aspersions.
Yeah.
I'm just repeating back to you the commitment you made to the people of Guam less than a week ago, Mr. Chair.
I made it for financial responsibility reasons. And if things are falling apart, Senator, the governor can call an emergency session like we've done before and come
Point
in
of
here
order.
and make appropriations.
Point of order. Mr. Chair, thank you. We can move forward. Thank you.
I will finish my one point though, Mr. Speaker, because it's important when comments get made like this. There is and there has been operationally under the direction of the Chairman on Education to ensure there's sufficient funds to continue
With all
to
due
manage the
respect,
federal
Mr.
funds.
Chair,
Yeah.
DOE is still for some $47 million short on their budget, regardless of what discussions have been
That's your opinion, but you don't know their cash position. Yeah.
Please.
Thank you very much. Senator Tulay, proceed.
Mr. Chair. So when I was reviewing what transpired in the budget, OFB budgeted 6.6 million more in FY25 than in FY24 for UOG operations, including the salaries that you're talking about, all these personnel. And that was more, I think, than the governor had requested. And it was also the amount that was agreed to, according to BBMR, by the governor's fiscal team. That was on the beginning of our budget. And when they came in on that day with beginning of our budget, they said they needed, or they wanted us to fund additional agencies, but not UOG, except for that repository, right, the outside. Yes, they gave us a list, and I can show you the list if you don't believe me, and it wasn't there. And that's why the budget was passed the way it was. And at that time, and I know OFB, they do not make errors when they say they have covered all warm bodies. So I'm pretty sure that they calculated with that increase of 6.6 million from the previous fiscal year to cover the warm bodies and the raises, because they had done that for all the other agencies in this, unless they made some huge errors. But you're telling us today that you're unable to live within this budget because of the salary increases that were known at the time and the previous salary increases that had also been passed by the legislature, or we had helped you out, like you said in the beginning, to jumpstart that with 3.6 million, and then the 22% that you was given after that in FY25. And I agree with the Speaker, Blas, that those assurances were made at the time that, you know, do you need this? Yes, but we're going to take care of this responsibility going forward. But it appears that if this is the list of things that are not funded with the budget that you received, and these are all your accreditation-related priorities that they funded other than warm bodies, or they prioritized other than the current personnel with the budgeted amount, and they funded other than the accreditation-related priorities. And I know that one of my colleagues, Senator Calvo, had asked this question as well, so I listened very carefully to the answers of what was funded then if you didn't use your budget to cover these accreditation priorities. I wanted to ask, what is the difference between, the bill asks for operational expenses and then repairs, maintenance, capital improvement projects, accreditation-related priorities, including furniture. So do these accreditation-related priorities, it says it includes, I think 48 personnel, or what was the number? 289 employees under accreditation-related priorities. Does that include other things too, like the furniture? Or only the personnel? Because it says includes 289 personnel.
So the 5.7 distribution includes the capital projects, the repairs, maintenance, and the accreditation-related priorities. It does not include what is within the title of the bill, the furniture, fixtures, equipment, and operations. So it's gone down from 5 items to 3. And so when the budget, and I can have Rachel chime in, but when the budget requests.
But the accreditation-related priorities, according to your, or according to the bill, it says accreditation-related priorities, which includes furniture. But on this letter we received, it says it includes 289 employees.
Yes.
So I just want to, does it include 289 employees plus furniture? Or?
No, no.
Just
the employees.
Only employees, okay.
Yes.
Well, so these amounts here are all salaries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so these employees were not covered under the, or prioritized under the existing budget. I mean, we've seen other agencies come in here and they say, we're in a critical need now because we've budgeted all our, thing. And of course, it's, I guess, more attractive to say the things we didn't or were unable to fund are the most critical items, like the accreditation-related activities or accreditation-related personnel. But we're not seeing here what we're paying for other than the accreditation-related priorities, which I would think, like my colleague was inferring, should have been paid first or prioritized first.
Thank you. That's a very important point, Madam Senator. Those positions are part of the staffing pattern within our FY 2025 budget request. Those positions are currently being paid for, but what they represent are the last 4 payrolls. The last 4 payrolls of this fiscal year to close out this particular fiscal year. That's what that 4.6 million represents. And so they are currently being paid. They represent faculty. They represent those employees within student affairs, the library, online learning, IT. Those all represent accreditation-related priorities as specified in the distribution. So it isn't because we didn't prioritize them. They're already prioritized. They're already being paid for. But there's a shortfall. When we entered the fiscal year 2025, even after the budget law was passed, it was still a shortfall. We did not have a balanced budget moving into fiscal year 2025. We still do not have a balanced budget continuing on to the rest of this. And essentially what we've done is continued on at the same level or whatever levels we've been given.
A lot of our
so it's still a short change.
A lot of the agencies had to do that, and we don't call it short change. We call it, we're asking every agency to do that. Some of them got less than what they had in the previous fiscal year.
Senator,
and none
your
of them got
time is up, so finish your comment, but your time is up.
None of them got the additional capital money as BBMR had outlined for us as to one of the reasons why UOG was taken care of at the time, because they had helped them through their federal funding or that other capital improvement money. So, and the taxpayers are paying the debt service on the new buildings. The legislature allowed UOG to establish a research corporation because the argument at the time was that that was going to be your other source of revenue. And they allowed use of the land in order for revenue and for the endowment fund to be able to help finance some of these capital projects. And all of these are good. And the government tries to fund the scholarships that it is mandating in the law. And so all of us working together, I think, have really done a very much. So this bill will probably going to pass, and I support that. But I just want to, I am concerned because we are being told we can't fund any other agency on Guam except for UOG, while GMH tells us they are falling apart and they have not even received the money to build the NICU unit that they've claimed for years now is critical
Senator,
critical,
you can carry
among other
that
things.
forward in
Situs
comments,
Masi.
please.
Yes.
I've given you a lot of latitude with regard to your time. Senator Sabina Paris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the panel. So, there was a lot of great questions, and just want to follow up on some of the comments that were made or the responses that were made. And so I think one of the concerning, I guess starting with you, Madam President, so you'd mentioned that you went into the year 2025 with an unbalanced budget, and previously as well. Did I hear that correctly?
No, just this particular current year.
And it was due to the raises?
The faculty salary adjustments that were approved by our board, yes. That, and of course the fully annualized or realized 22% adjustment for classified personnel.
Okay. So I guess, my concern is long-term sustainability of UOG. And let's say I know it's we're feeling the anxiety of what's happening in the national stage. And I noticed in one of the WASC letter that one of the recommendations was for inclusion, the DEI stuff. And I'm sure you're working very hard where's WASC on this compared to, what the administration is in going forward with?
Yes. So I was in a meeting in February, and there was a huge discussion because the standards all relate to DEI. And so we've decided, at least at the university level, that we would scrub anything that has any hint of DEI, anything that's going to be considered unlawful based on the executive orders, anything that could potentially jeopardize our Pell Grant, any federal funds that the university expects to support our students, and of course other grants. So that's something that we've taken very seriously, and we've gone ahead and made the decision to make those adjustments.
Okay, so that's good to know, but we never know what's going to come through because we're hearing they're trying to cut DOE, right?
Yes,
and so what is that going to mean to us here?
Absolutely.
It's a huge liability here for
Sure.
our local government. And so fortunately when I was a teacher in DOE system, I didn't have to experience any payless paydays. And they had to go through austere measures. And so I remember even during John Fernandez's time, there were several layers to austerity measures. And I just want to know, do you have austerity measures or backup plans? Let's say, for instance, that this bill doesn't pass. What is your austerity measure that you're going to put in place to ensure that everything else, is in play?
Thank you for that. So we currently have a task force on cost efficiencies, deficit reduction. We also have a task force that is going to be rolling out with regard to revenue enhancement, revenue diversification, and enrollment growth. We've completed a consulting review for a strategic enrollment management plan that's intent on guiding the improvement of enrollment growth, advancement, fundraising, and so forth. We are monitoring every single position that is vacated and freezing, pausing, and prioritizing and reprioritizing. We've dual-hatted positions of administrators. We're trying to, as much as possible, to see the cumulative, the running balance for cost savings. My office alone, I've saved $300,000 within the first 2 months. We're looking at other offices. Every dean and director has been asked to submit their plan for 3 things. First is austerity measures. Second relates to revenue enhancement, and the third relates to enrollment growth. And so those plans have been reviewed. A number of them have been returned to make them stronger and look for ways in which we can run essentially arrive at savings as well as new revenues in order to decrease the dependency on the general fund.
Okay, thank you for that. And what is the most impactful measure or measures together?
The most impactful measures has to do with frozen hiring. Those vacated positions that are critical, such as a physics professor or an engineering professor or a nursing professor, when those lines are vacated, it takes a while to fill those lines. And there are savings realized in the length of time it takes to actually find a replacement. We're able to realize some 50% savings with regard to personnel and the corresponding fringe benefits. We're able to find ways in which we can, again, increase that running balance of savings until we come up with what we need to pay for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or perhaps to offset some of the negative impacts from grants that have been terminated or paused for some reason.
Yeah, because I believe personnel is the biggest cost for
Absolutely.
university, amongst other agencies too, I believe. So, yeah, I mean, I totally see how the pay increase kind of created, it's a self-inflicted sort of a crisis, I feel.
Yeah.
And going back to the endowment fund, I know it's restricted, but is there any way to ensure that at least with, so that any costs can be sent over or offset so that there is no increase to tuition?
Thank you. We are going to be working very closely with the Endowment Foundation Board of Directors. I appreciate that, recommendation. There will be efforts towards trying to improve upon, garnering more support, particularly in areas that are going to defray any kind of tuition increase. So we will work closely with them on that.
And then in other federal grants that I'm seeing in other agencies, a big part of it is they pay for personnel cost.
Yes.
And I know you stated that it's just really just a supplemental type of funding for the principal investigators. But is there any way to reprogram those federal grants so that they can take up more of the burden of the personnel, the salaries? Is that an option with the grantors?
Well, we cannot use those funds for operations. Some of them don't have any wiggle room to even pay for anything that has to do with maybe even accounting related support. What we do find is that if there are any additional funds that are considered unrestricted, they go back to the program unit to expand on the services related to that grant-funded program.
Okay, and the other thing I know, I think in the 36th or 35th Guam Legislature, we did pass, we updated your charter and to include the ability to borrow funds without the legislature's oversight. And I just want to know, have you borrowed any funds as a result of that change?
Okay.
Thank you, Senator. We tried once, and we got blocked by the AG's office, and we haven't been able to since.
Okay, and then in regards to liabilities, what is the liabilities of the University of Guam as far as bonds or any kind of, I guess, borrowing is concerned?
Yeah, so we still have, I think it's about 11 million owing on the SBPA building, and we have a new loan which we're about to start making payments for the Student Center and the Engineering Annex of 21.7 million.
And that's in total for all of those buildings? And that's for the upcoming year?
Yeah, we begin making payments this year, yeah. Okay. And SBPA we pay every year.
And is that included in the budget? Or how are you paying that?
Yeah, we're trying to get it in the budget. It was approved many years ago, and
yes,
we're trying to keep that alive, yeah.
But the payments are covered in your current budget?
We won't begin making payments till 26.
Okay, okay. And that's going to be a 21.7 million for the whole year?
No, it's a little over $1 million for the year.
Okay. And I remember the aquaculture hatchery. I know we granted you a longer term for that one for, I think it was a procurement or what have you. What is the income coming in from that?
It's not a big amount yet. I think it's about 30,000 a year we're getting. It hasn't developed. The typhoon didn't help us, and it hasn't developed the way we had hoped. The owner passed away last summer, and so they're in the process of new management and new leadership, and so we're still hoping that turns into something more in the future.
Okay, and what was the expected revenues coming from that?
Yeah, a big part of what we were trying to do is just, we had been putting money in, and we were having a hard time getting it to return. So we tried this public-private partnership idea, and I think like it's about 100,000 a year that we were hoping to get out of that. So it wasn't a big number, but at least we weren't going to be losing.
Okay, and what is your biggest expense in the university besides personnel? What's the next biggest expense?
That would be utilities.
And what is that at?
It's about 6 million.
Okay. All right. Just a kind of question about austerity. So again, what would be your first move to cover these costs? Should you, let's say this bill doesn't pass, what is your first move to cut costs that would address your need right now?
Yeah, so we'll continue to cut down on expenditures, freeze specific types of expenditures, freeze certain positions. We're not filling vacancies currently, but as positions become vacant due to retirement or resignations, then of course we look at those to see if they need to be filled. Obviously, if we have a retiree, any new replacement is going to be at a much lower cost to the university, so we take that into consideration. And we're also looking at possible furloughs, if that's the case. We are trying not to go into that direction, but that is always an option available to us. Any furloughs associated with classified employees, we can't do anything about that. Anything regard to faculty, the faculty union agreement requires a certain timeline. That's part of the governance process. It takes a long time. But there are other ways in which we can address furloughs in the more immediate term.
Would that save you immediately, like in the next couple months?
Well, it won't save us $5.7 million, that's for sure. Yeah.
And how much did you receive from the ARP funds?
The ARP funding? ARP? The $8 million that was for the construction costs related to the Student Success Center.
And that was used completely, or was there anything left on the table?
No.
It's
all used.
It's completely encumbered.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your responses, and look forward to seeing UOG overcome this hurdle.
Thank you very much.
Senator Perez. Want to welcome our students. Thank you for coming and getting a first-hand look of your government at work. Welcome to the People's House. Our colleagues, we have completed the second round of questioning. We are going to recess and allow the panel to be dismissed, and we will come back after recess for questions, comments, and I will dispense of the amendments that are currently on my desk and in the drive. At this point, there will be no amendments accepted beyond this, as I had made clear from the beginning in terms of the rules of engagement. So whatever's in the drive right now is what we're going to hear on the floor. So panel, I will recess and you can go enjoy what's left of Mes Samoru Zusmasi. We're in recess. Buenas tardes, Talu. The Committee of the Whole is back in session. And we are doing the amendments based on when they were entered into the drive, the date and the time. So the first amendment is by Senator Tello Taitegui. For those of you that are following, we've been using that control number on the top. This is B58 TTT L6-7 1-2 P1-2 COTW. Senator Taitegui, you recognize at this time for your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, well, thank you for recognizing the amendment that I put forward, which is on lines 6 and 7, 1 to 2, page 1 and 2. Basically what this is I had this amendment earlier on, and then of course we received the letter from the University of Guam, it kind of going through and explaining how they're breaking down this $5 million. And so what I did was, for me, it was about, not salaries, not increases in salary raises or anything like that. It was to be placed in areas like capital improvements. But after listening to what they had to say, I think that I'd like to make an amendment to my amendment, if I can, Mr. Chair, and that would be, well, this is the proposed amendment, but which I'd like to make an amendment to.
Okay, Senator Taitegui, is your amendment lengthy?
No, and in fact, it just unstrikes out certain areas. For instance, to the University of Guam for the purpose of, and then it maintains, strike out operational expenses, and then it doesn't strike out repairs, maintenance, it keeps that in, capital improvements, projects, and then it keeps in an accreditation-related priorities. Then it crosses out, including the purchase of furniture for the Schools of Health and Engineering Weary and Student Success Center. If you see the letter and what was discussed earlier, these areas don't need to be covered. The furniture of the School of Health, the Engineering Weary Student Center, definitely not operational costs. So that's why my amendment is in that state is to not strike out repairs, maintenance, and accreditation relation priorities, but everything else is stricken out.
Okay, Senator Taitegui, for those following along, unless I might be just a little bit remedial, but can you just go one by one of what you want to put back in? So everybody's following, if you got your pen, whatever else, you can block off what's being put back in through this amendment. Can you start with wherever you start on the first, and we'll just mark it as being put back in.
Okay. So the first strikeout is operational expenses. That stays in.
Okay, so we're putting that back in.
Right, that's still in. That's still stricken out. Okay, that hasn't changed.
It remains stricken, you mean?
Yep, operational expenses remains crossed out.
Okay.
And this is one area, colleagues, that was not incorporated into that letter. Now the second one, where it says repairs and maintenance, we unstrike that out.
Okay, so that's being put back in.
That's being put back in. Capital improvements, maintain the same. Capital improvement projects, that wasn't touched. Okay, are you ready for the next?
I am ready.
Okay, and then then it says, and accreditation related priorities, this stays in.
Okay, so it's back in.
Right.
Okay.
And then it's a period after that, a period. Priorities, then period. And then including the purchase of furnitures for the School of Health and Engineering, Weary, and Student Success Center, which was not incorporated in their letter, Mr. Chair. So that is all still stricken out.
Okay. Does everyone understand the amendment to the amendment? So I don't hear anyone. Okay, go ahead. Yes, you're recognized,
Just so that we're clear,
Senator.
it's to the University of Guam for the purpose of repair, maintenance, capital improvement projects, and accreditation-related priorities, period.
Yes.
Right?
Sounds like you got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Speaker Blas.
I thought it was for the purpose of operational expense, capital improvement projects, and accreditation-related priorities. Oh, no, okay, yes, you're right, you're right, repairs, maintenance. I stand corrected, I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm assuming everybody understands the amendment to the amendment now that has been proffered by Senator Taitigui. That correct? Okay,
Yes.
so on the amendment to the amendment, would anybody like to be recognized? Senator Perez, you are recognized.
I rise sitting down in support of this amendment. I think it totally makes sense because it is reinforced by the letter that UOG sent. So I commend the author for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Anyone else on the amendment to the amendment? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair. I too rise while sitting to support the amendment. I think it's absolutely germane for us to provide conditions to the funds that we appropriate to these various government entities. And so I commend the good senator from Tamuning for proffering it, and I encourage its passage. Mr. Chair.
Masi, Senator Barnett. Anyone else on the Taitigui amendment to the amendment? Mr. Speaker, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also rise in support of this amendment. It does provide some it's pretty clear as to what this is for, and as was stated, this is just validating or basically acknowledging the letter that was submitted by the University of Guam for its purposes, and I appreciate the discussions that we had with it. So I rise in support of this amendment as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the amendment to the amendment, Senator Chalai, you're recognized.
Yeah, I have no objection. I just wanted to state this language, accreditation-related priorities, is so, yeah, we don't see this in any other appropriation language because, and they've said it themselves, that everything they do is accreditation related, and we would hope so, including the repairs, the maintenance, and the capital improvement projects, and the salaries that almost every other agency includes under operational expenses, and they also have included under operational expenses. I just find that some funky language that they're using to kind of say that they didn't fund their salaries under operations, because it's more convincing to the legislature to call it accreditation-related priorities. But I think we can all agree, these are salaries, these are operational expenses, absolutely, especially if these are classified employees and tenured professors. So, I don't know. That's my only comment. I just wanted to make that on the record. Masi.
Thank you, Senator Chalahi. On the amendment to the amendment, does anyone else would like to be recognized? On the amendment to the amendment, I see no hands, so I'm going to go back to the author of the amendment to the amendment. Would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to close, and I thank my colleagues who spoke in favor of this amendment, and I do as well had concerns on the previous speaker regarding accreditation-related priorities, so I've asked the Oversight Chair of Education to verify if the letter from March 5th, 2025 is appended into the committee report, because this clearly states, you know, that the accreditation-related priorities, this includes 289 employees from the School of Business and Public Administration and Social. You know, it goes down explaining, you know, all those employees, which is important because it is very broad when you say accreditation-related priorities. But if you can give me 1 minute and less, if it's not, then we can come back and I can append it, ask for the committee to append this letter to the committee report to clarify.
Yes, Senator, we'll get the clarification, and if it's not, I will go to you.
No, I just got it from the Oversight Chair of Education. The letter is in the committee report. So that being said, you know, we can always revert to the definition on accreditation-related priorities. So other than that, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. I think that's my last amendment anyway, so thank you.
Okay, Sus Masi, on the amendment to the amendment that's been proffered, are there any objections? Seeing and hearing none, amendment to the amendment passes. We are now back to the amendment as amended. Are there any comments on the amendment as amended? Senator Perez, you're recognized. Senator Perez, you have canceled your recognition. Any comments on the amendment that has now been amended? Seeing and hearing none, the author, would you like to close? Waive closing. So on the amendment as amended, are there any objections? Seeing, hearing none, amendment passes as amended. Moving now along to the next amendment, chronologically that was placed in the drive. Colleagues, this is Amendment B58, TTT, L2-3, P2, COTW. This amendment has been proffered by Senator Tydegui. And Senator, you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I almost forgot about this other amendment. And this amendment, Mr. Chair, as you know, well, let me just give you, it's line 2 and 3, page 2. It strikes out, this appropriation shall be available until fully expended. However, the amendment now incorporates the funds appropriated herein shall be available for the expenditure only until the end of the fiscal year 2025. Any unexpended funds remaining after September 30th, 2025 shall revert back to the general fund. Well, the way we heard testimony from UOG and the dire need of needing this funding, I can assume that it will be used up by that time, right away. But in the event it's not, then the money would be reverted back to the general fund for an appropriation, either back to them for FY 2026 or to another agency that is in desperate need of funding. So this amendment just puts the feet, fire to their feet to use the money like they said they so desperately need, because if they don't, it will go back. There was something else I was going to mention, but at this time I just ask my colleagues for their support. We know what happens when funds are appropriated to agencies. They don't use it, and we allow them to use their lapses, and we definitely don't know. We don't have an accounting of all those lapses in prior years that other agencies are allowed to keep, what they do with it, or how they hold on to it, or even how they spend it. So we are in dire times right now with federal freezing of funds. Our economy is not where it used to be. So it's just keeping them, keeping track of these funds that we are planning on giving out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
On the Tydegui amendment, does anyone wish to speak on the amendment? Tydegui amendment? Seeing and hearing none, would you like to close, Senator? So the amendment has been proffered and the author is closed. So now I'm calling for the vote on the amendment. Are there any objections on the amendment? I see an objection. So all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Amendment passes.
Mr. Chair, I think I really am done now, I think. That's my last amendment. So thank you for the
Okay.
opportunity. And thank you for the support on both of my amendments.
Thank you, Senator Titagui. So moving on to the next amendment that was placed chronologically in the drive. This amendment is, for those of you following along, B58 VAB L1-7 1-5 P1-2 COTW. This amendment is proffered by Senator Borja. And Senator Vince Borja, you are now recognized at this time on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to propose an amendment that would create a new Section 2, unauthorized use. The funds appropriated herein shall not be used for any salary raises or the creation of new positions.
Would you like to discuss your amendment, Senator?
Yes, just real quick. This amendment is pretty self-explanatory. The money cannot be used for salary raises and the creation of new positions. I think we just need to explore the raises in increments, and we'll do that in the next year's budget and not today.
Thank you, Senator. And I noticed that you have renumbered also the subsequent amendments. So that's what we're seeing here in this amendment. On the Borja amendment, was anybody want to be recognized? Senator Chalai, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, I'm glad this amendment is being proffered because, yeah, I think it's appropriate that the first time when they came to us about wanting that 3.4 million for their salary increases, that was for faculty. And we did ask them, as Speaker Blas pointed out in the discussion with them, whether they were going to be able to sustain their own salary increases, these raises beyond that, and they said yes. And then they approved the 22% for the other personnel, and that was also calculated in OFB's and BBMR and DOA's calculations for FY25. And so I just think it's appropriate that if all the other agencies of the government are bracing for cuts and trying to prepare for, you know, contingency plans so that we can take care of our most critical needs that are still looming in front of us and have been for years, that they can hold off on any salary raises or new positions for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Thank you, Senator Chalai. On the Borja amendment, anyone else would like to be recognized? Senator Barnett, you're recognized. And then Senator Perez.
Mr. Chair, I support the amendment, and I think it's further evidence that absolutely the legislature can attach strings and conditions to the funding we provide, Mr. Chair. So for that reason, I'm encouraged by these conditions that we're applying to this funding, because I don't believe that agencies should just come in here like it's an ATM machine, you know, and just get $5 million with no strings attached. So I appreciate the offering of the amendment, sir.
Senator Barnett. Senator Perez, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do support this amendment. I think it recognizes the fact that salary raises are not only can be legislated, but it also can occur at the regent level. And so when we're talking about hard times, it's important to think of austerity versus, I guess, yeah, more fiscally responsive measures need to be in place. And looking out for, you know, the rainy days hit us. And so we really need to think about anticipating how we're going to cushion any of the cuts, potential cuts that are coming, maybe coming, I should say. Although we're seeing it nationally that it is there. And we really need to prepare for these hard times, and I support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Perez. On the Borja amendment, anybody want to be recognized? on the Borja amendment? Seeing and hearing none. Senator, would you like to close on your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for the support. You know, I think the push behind this amendment and really ensuring, especially after the the testimony at the public hearing, is to ensure the public that we definitely want to support the university, but to also put put some reassurance that it won't be used towards any pay raises. So again, I ask my colleagues for their support, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Borja. So the amendment has been closed on, and so I'll call for the vote at this time. All in favor, or are there any objections to the Borja amendment? Seeing and hearing none, amendment is adopted. Moving along once again in chronological order as has been placed in the amendment file. This is, oh boy. Can I take a short recess? Colleagues, we're back. Good thing I went to recess and didn't keep the mic on because I had the wrong senator. I'll admit my fault. This amendment, as we go along here, is B58, JSSA L1-2.
That was withdrawn, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Because that was ready by the amendment of Senator Borja. That was good enough.
Okay, so it was still in my file. So amendment has been withdrawn. Thank you, Senator San Agustin. The next amendment in the drive, chronologically submitted, is B58 CB L5 P2 COTW. And this amendment is proffered by Senator Chris Burnett. Senator Burnett, you're recognized on your amendment.
See, just Masia, Mr. Chair, but I believe that I replaced and rescinded that amendment with another one.
So once again,
okay, I got you.
B58 CB, yeah. That's why I'm calling out.
B58 CB L5 P2?
Yes.
B58.
B58
Bingo.
CB L5, absolutely.
Right on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You got blackjack.
I did. Okay.
Mr. Chair, that's the timestamp 3:41 p.m., correct?
2:35 p.m.?
The 2:35.
2:35, Senator.
Okay.
My Vice Speaker. So everybody's clear on this amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Senator Burnett, you may proceed.
Tidos Masi, Mr. Chair. I think we've went through a lot of comments on the bill, but just generally, I think if we're going to bump UOG to the head of the line, as I had said earlier, there are many agencies who wish that they were sitting at this table in front of us about to receive a $5.7 million appropriation at such an uncertain time. We really have only begun to just feel the many impending cuts and federal funding freezes that are looming with the Trump administration. So just generally, I think that if we're going to give this $5.7 million to the University of Guam, and I agree with the need for it, I'm just saying via this amendment that we have to put conditions on this money. And so if we are going to basically subsidize the University of Guam to the tune of $5.7 million, which in my opinion, given all of the uncertainty with the cuts and the freezes, is actually worth a lot more than $5.7 million, then we must ensure that they don't attempt to place any further burden on the backs of the University of Guam students. And I think that's, very basic. There's a lot of questions from some of the colleagues in here, but just to again refresh the memory, is we passed a tuition freeze when we gave UOG the 22% salary increase. And so we have already set the precedent for, again, just the very basic legislative authority to attach conditions to the funding that we provide. And although Dr. Enriquez's comments were very muddy, I think that if you follow the national news, you'll see that legislatures across the country are providing funding to universities with conditions attached, very similar conditions with this amendment. And so I rise in support of the students, and the amendment amends Section 2 of the bill, no increase in tuition or student fees. So it reads, notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, policy, or procedure, the University of Guam shall not impose any increase in tuition, mandatory student fees, or other student-related fees for a period of 3 years from the enactment of this act, if such an increase is justified by salary adjustments, operational expenses, or capital improvement projects funded by this appropriation. I know for my colleagues who might be a little hesitant to grant a 3-year tuition freeze to the well-deserving students in the University of Guam, the amendment also proposes that if UOG proposes any tuition or fee increase within this 3-year period, they shall report it to the legislature, and we shall review it no later than 60 days prior to the date of its implementation. The University of Guam shall submit a detailed financial justification demonstrating that such an increase is unrelated to this appropriation. The University of Guam shall certify compliance with this provision in its annual financial report to Legislature and Guahan. Failure to comply with this provision shall result in a legislative review of the university's tuition and fee structure, and any subsequent tuition or fee increase within the next 3 fiscal years shall require prior approval by Legislature and Guahan. And, you know, Mr. Chair, this is not just for currently enrolled students. I think that as a body, and you'll see this is evidenced by the accreditation report, which I want to remind my colleagues has nothing at all about the legislature providing conditions to the funding that we appropriate to the legislature. However, what is contained in this accreditation report is that the University of Guam must do its best to enhance student retention and graduation. And so I believe that if we freeze tuition where it's at, not only is it a benefit to the hardworking families and the students of the University of Guam, but I think it further serves as an enticement so that students who want to receive a higher education will be able to do so at a rate that's set now and will remain hopefully there for the next 3 years. So again, Mr. Chair, and also just to kind of speak to this narrative that the University of Guam should be autonomous and the legislature shouldn't fiddle with it. I mean, if they were autonomous, they wouldn't be here before us asking for this appropriation. So again, I plead for the support of my colleagues for this amendment, as I believe it's exactly what the students of the University of Guam need. And again, it will serve as an enticement to increase enrollment and student retention and graduation for the University of Guam, which is totally in alignment with the recommendations contained in their accreditation report. Sidos Masi, Mr. Chair.
Masi, Senator Burnett. Before I go to the Speaker Blas, I'll just let you know that because we passed the earlier amendment that became the Section 2, so now this will be a new Section 3, and effective date will be the new Section 4. So, Mr. Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I agree in principle with the intent of this amendment. However, in order for this to take place, we're going to have to permit somebody to break a law and then to justify why he broke the law. Because your first sentence says you shall not impose, followed by, but if you decide you're going to impose, you shall do this. The first sentence here is the law. It will set the precedent, the law. The second one says that if you're going to do it, you're going to have to do it this way. So if you're going to rob, you cannot rob the store, but if you're going to rob the store, you can only rob it for so much. the language here is not consistent. And I'm not going to be one to be able to say, this is the law, however, if you want to break the law, you can do it this way. It's not kosher. So you may want, if I can ask, to help the author of the bill, on the amendment, take a little bit of recess so that they can word that a little better.
We're in a 1-minute recess to work on the language and the amendment. We are back from recess, and Senator Blas, you're recognized to report back from the recess.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in conferring with the author of the amendment, I'm going to defer back to him. He's going to make the appropriate amendment for the.
Senator Burnett, I understand you have some language to insert, and we'll just call that an amendment to the amendment.
See, just Mr. Chair, if I could, the confusion came from that, and notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, the University of Guam shall not impose any increase in tuition, student fees, other student-related fees for a period of 3 years based on this appropriation. And so the second half of it is related to any other proposed tuition or fee increase not related to this appropriation. And so I would like to just make a simple amendment to the amendment. And if you'd indulge me and save the jungle and just do it, verbally, the amendment to the amendment would be after the word any to insert other. So it just kind of like clarifies a little bit that this second half of this is referencing any other tuition fee increase based on any other type of funding or, yeah. Okay, so notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, policy, or procedure, UOG shall not impose any increase in tuition, mandatory student fees, or other student-related fees for a period of 3 years from the enactment of this act if such an increase is justified by salary adjustments, operational expenses, or CIP funded by this appropriation period. Any other proposed tuition or fee increase within this period shall be reported to and reviewed by Legislature and Guam. And so I think that kind of satisfies the little bit of the befuddlement of the good speaker from Barragata and clarifies that the first sentence is referencing the $5.7 million we're appropriating now, and the second half is covering it should UOG come to us and say, not inclusive of the $5.7 million, we plan to increase the tuition, then they would have to submit that to the legislature and be subject to our review.
Excuse me, Senator Burnett. Does everyone understand the amendments? Speaker Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to work with the author on this thing. I agree. The insertion of the word "other" would basically help to separate out the issue here. It still puts the restriction on the increases based on the appropriations that we're doing. However, it still provides them the opportunity to come to us for any other increased proposals. It still has to come to us for approval, but it gives them that option and the ability to do so. So I appreciate the amendment and I support it.
Ms. Masi, Senator, or Speaker Blas. On the amendment to the amendment, Senator San Agustin, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First paragraph, at the word appropriation period, I don't support the 3 years. I do support any proposed tuition or fee increase comes before the legislature. Let them come before 60 days out. That I can agree with. But to say 3 years out, when this appropriation is only for now. So you're trying to commit 5.7 is worth 3 years? Wrong answer. I don't know. I object to this amendment. If we just stick with that part with any other proposed, I can agree to that. And then as we go down, fair compliance shall result in a review within the next 3 years physical prior to, I can agree to the rest.
Okay.
Because then it corners them. They gotta justify up front.
Senator, I believe that in that term, we're going to dispose of the amendment to the amendment because we're correcting the language.
Okay.
So can you make that when we go back to the amendment as amended if this amendment passes?
I object to it, so no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Snuggs.
Point of information, Mr. Chair, during the committee of the whole, the proposed tuition increases that were discussed by Ms. Rachel Field, there were 5% increase in the fall semester, another 5% increase proposed in the spring semester for a total of 10% increase, which she said would generate $1.2 million. So absolutely $5.7 million is worth more than a year to me because we're talking about these proposed tuition increases generating $1.2 million. And so $1.2 million times 3 is $3.6 million. So thank Mr. Rollins, my high school math teacher, for that. So yes, absolutely, we're providing $5.7 million, but if we translate that into the revenue that could be generated by the tuition increases, I think we're well within reason in supporting, the students of the University of Guam. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, I really want to dispose of this amendment to the amendment because it appears as though we're having a lot of conversation on the primary amendment. So can we square this away? On the amendment to the amendment, are there anyone that likes to speak? Senator Cabo, you're recognized. Okay. So on the amendment to the amendment, seeing and hearing no one else who wishes to speak, is there any objection to the amendment to the amendment?
There was an objection.
Okay, there is an objection. All in favor to the amendment?
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator Tiger.
The amendment just incorporates the word other, correct?
I understand.
Okay, so just, so everybody knows, it just incorporates the word other.
Yes,
Okay,
that's why I'm
thank
trying
you.
to move
Okay,
on from
got
this,
it.
Senator Tidegree, so we can get back to the main amendment.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So for what I understand is the objection was to the main amendment, not the amendment to the amendment. Can you clarify that, please?
Yeah.
Thank
you, Senator Paris. Is the objection on the amendment to the amendment?
Both.
Okay, both. There is an objection to the amendment to the amendment. Yes.
Point of information.
Yes.
What was spoken earlier was that the good senator from GIGO said he didn't oppose the other part, that section part, from what I heard.
I understand, Senator Paris, but he is still objecting to
So
the
he's
amendment to the
objecting to
amendment.
both
Yes,
now?
yes.
Okay, thank
He
you.
has clarified that he's still objecting to the amendment, okay? So without anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment to the amendment, there has been an objection. All those in favor to the amendment, please signify by raising your hand. Amendment passes. Now we are back to the amendment as amended. Would anybody like to speak? Senator Cabo, you are recognized.
I just wanted to see if the author will be amicable to amend his amendment to state that no increase shall take place within 1 year as opposed to 3 years.
Okay, at this time,
I would like to make an amendment.
Okay, so go ahead. I think the best thing to do, Senator Calvo, is just go ahead and proffer it and we'll go from there.
Okay, so I'd like to make an amendment to the amendment to state that instead of a period of 3 years from the enactment of the act, it should be just 1 year.
Okay, Senator Calvo, does everybody understand that amendment so that we don't have to put it in writing? I'll take the will of the body. So can you repeat your amendment, Senator Calvo?
I would like to make an amendment to the amended amendment.
Yes, please proceed.
To make the mandatory to make the period of 3 years, to change it to, instead of 3 years, make it 1 year.
Does everybody understand the proposal for the amendment as amended that's being proffered by Senator Calvo? Okay, everybody understands it, so I'm going to go to Senator Tina Muñoz-Barnes. You raised your hand to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was normally in this process was if an amendment was amended, then we dispose of the amendment and then start another one. But I understand the concept, so
Senator, I did gavel down and dispose of that amendment. It passed by 9
Right.
votes. And so now we're back on the amendment.
But it already had one amended, so it was like you can only amend it one time
You
before.
can only amend
but
it when you're doing the amendment, but any senator can proffer another amendment as amended.
And as I look at this, Mr. Chair, I kind of share the same sentiments with the proffer of the amendment as being proffered right now, because I know that it's the board's function to decide and move forward with the tuition increases, and it's like we're impeding, and I understand that what we're asking for is, and it was noted earlier, if we give you the $5 million, then you can't do this for so many years. But I think based on the good senator of Barragata, or Mighty Barragata, right? That I'm more inclined to supporting that version and that reduction from 3 to 1. Santa Mosi.
Thank you, Senator Uña Barnes. I saw you had your hand up, Senator San Augustine, on the amendment to the amendment as amended.
I'm in support of that amendment.
Okay.
To the amendment. As amended.
So we continue now on the Calvo amendment to the amendment as amended. Senator Taitigui, you may speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I like the 3, but it does seem quite extensive, you know, and we can expect UOG come back here again and again for the next 3 years because of the issue of raising it to 3. But I think 1 year is a compromise, and I think the good author of that amendment realizes that you know, the constraints that the University of Guam has and the issues that they're going to face with these federal funds freezing and not being able to get the budget that they've been asking for, even though we have increased their budget every year since 2023. So I stand in full support of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Taitigui. On the amendment to the amendment as amended, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Anyone else like to speak? Senator Chalahi, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, and I understand the intent of the amendment to the amendment, and maybe on another occasion or in previous years, as I remember the first time that I was able to pass a tuition freeze for UOG. That was because we were giving them, again, additional money for some other purpose. And then they came back again and asked for raises for their faculty that actually had already been approved, I think, by their regents, and they just wanted us to fund it. And as I talked about today, their tuition, if they raise it by 5% a semester, it's going to total $1.2 million a year. Over a period of 3 years, that's $3 million. So we are subsidizing them by $5 million in lieu of them raising their fees to cover that amount by $3 million. So I think it's absolutely fair. And if they have to make additional adjustments, then we're asking them to make your adjustments elsewhere, not on the students, but elsewhere. And this freeze on tuition is very consistent with almost all of us in the election said, yes, we'd like to see UOG tuition free if possible. We'd like to see our students go from high school into college if they want to, and not be limited because of tuition. And if we are going to give them money to cover salaries, then I feel like they can find, these are our most educated people on Guam. They can find ways to do what they have to do without tuition increases if we have to cover their raises and we have to cover, actually that's what we're covering, is they said they're short because they can't cover the raises that they gave in previous years. And I really find it very consistent with, I mean, not consistent, but they have similarities with GMH. The UOG Board of Regents, they set the salaries. They control their hiring and the procurement. They control the allocations of their appropriations because we give it to them in lump sum. They plan their own capital improvement projects, set their own fees. Maybe no one dies based on UOG's priorities, but taxpayers, very similar to GMH, are paying for the debt service on the new buildings. We allowed research corporations at the University of Guam for them to gain independent revenue, independent even of procurement rules and all kinds of things, a very special entity, because they said they had a very special need for revenue, independent revenue. We've also allowed them use of their land to back up loans and other financing, including the endowment fund, which, as you know, can restrict the amounts that they get. But we also, the taxpayers, have helped them by allocating land to back up their financing. And again, the scholarships that the government has mandated, we also appropriate for those scholarships. So I just think it's not going to harm UOG to freeze these tuition for 3 years based on this, and especially in light of what these students might also be facing on every other front if these threats of cuts really come into play. We are not going to be able to fund services across the government. I mean, that's potential. So I'm just saying this is just a freeze, and I think that they can handle it, and they can absolutely, and the amounts are more than enough based on what we are giving them. So I'm going to object to the 1 year. Well, I'm not going to support the 1 year at this time. I support the 3 years. I think that that's what's justified based on the amounts that we are giving today and the past amounts that we have given in addition to the regular budget.
Senator Taidagui, or Senator Talai, excuse me. On the amendment as amended, you can proceed, Senator Burnett.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to respectfully object to this amendment, to the amendment. I think the retiring speaker, the good gentle lady from Jotnya, reiterated some of my comments on the open, is that these tuition increases could potentially generate some $1.2 million annually for the University of Guam. And so I think if you tally that up, 3 years is very reasonable. And it really, we know that we can't give free tuition. Harvard's giving free tuition. Universities across the continental United States are doing everything they can to lower and even subsidize tuition. And I'm realistic. I know we can't do that. So I think the least we can do is stabilize tuition to benefit the currently enrolled students, and then also to serve as an enticement to other individuals who are seeking higher education. And I also feel like this stabilization of the tuition for this period is prudent, especially given the uncertainty of the cuts and the freezes that are going to impact our people. I mean, we know the cost of living, from the price of eggs to the price of college, it's very challenging for our people. And I think that when we're striving to better our island and to turn out more leaders at the University of Guam, we have to make sure that our students can enter the University of Guam affordably and become those leaders that we need. So I just want to again lodge my respectful objection to the amendment and really more stand my ground on the period of 3 years for tuition and student fee freezes. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Burnett. On the amendment to the amendment as amended, is there anyone else who would like to speak? On the amendment as amended, would anybody else like to speak? So I will now allow the author to close, seeing and hearing no other members to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, truth of the matter is, I am just trying to find a common ground where we can move forward with all these, wherein instead of striking out or allowing the increase or in tuition, The common ground, this is just like a bargain wherein we can all meet all together as opposed to 3 years, because in 3 years, 3 years is a long time. We don't know what can happen next year. We don't know what's, with all these tax cuts that we are experiencing, we don't really know how stable, you know, entities could be, correct? Now, as far as obviously we care for our students and we support education, right? But the truth of the matter is, University of Guam offers a quality education. And if you compare it to many universities outside our island, our tuition fee is really, really very, very affordable. Now, common ground is really just looking for that middle ground where we can all agree and everybody will be happy that we can help both sides. Our university, an entity that actually does so much for our community, and at the same time, obviously, our future generation. So for me, proposing this amendment to the amendment, it just makes sense. So I just urge everybody to please, my colleagues, dear colleagues, that let's support this. Let's find a common ground in all these and move along. Thank you, Sijusmasi Chair.
Susmansi, Senator Calvo. So after that close on the amendment as amended, there has been an objection. So all in favor of the amendment to the amendment that's being proffered, please indicate by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Amendment passes. We are now back on the amendment as amended. Would anybody like to speak on the amendment as amended? Seeing and hearing none, I will now allow Senator Talaya, you're recognized.
Sijusmasi. Again, I just want to state for the record this amendment to the bill. Well, Mr. Chair, we're going to have a chance to talk on the bill.
You are
round?
now speaking on the amendment
yeah.
as amended.
Okay, so I will hold on that. Thank you. So after the third round includes talking on the bill.
The third round will be for also comments.
Yes,
Once
all right.
we
So just
dispose of all the amendments, then I will go to each member for their final comments on the bill. So seeing and hearing no one else on the amendment as amended, I am now offering the author to close on his amendment as amended. That's you, Senator Barnett.
Yes, Sijusmasi, Mr. Chair. You know, we're taught to be thankful with whatever we're given, but again, I just feel that in this conversation with the University of Guam and the plans they revealed to increase tuition by some 10% to generate, you know, over $1 million. Again, I think 3 years is what the students and the families of Guam absolutely deserve. And nothing further, Mr. Chair. Sijusmasi.
Sijusmasi, Senator Barnett. So we have completed all of the discussion on the Barnett amendment as amended. So now I will ask, is there any objections to the amendment as amended? Seeing, hearing none, amendment passes as amended. We have white smoke, ladies and gentlemen. We are now on our last amendment that has been chronologically placed in the drive. This amendment, as we go along, is B58, CB, L5, P2, CO, TW. This amendment is been proffered. Stand by. We have more than better than white smoke. Senator Barnett,
Mr. Chair, so actually what had happened was I'll proffer that amendment first, but I meant to replace it with the one that we just successfully passed. Sijusmasi, Mr. Chair.
So are you withdrawing the amendment at this time? Is there any objection to Senator Barnett withdrawing this amendment? Amendment is withdrawn. Colleagues, we have completed all the amendments that were placed in the file. And so now we will go to the final portion of this committee of the whole, allowing each member, if they so choose, to make comments on the bill. And I'm going to start with Mr. Speaker. Speaker Blas, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. You know, Mr. Chair, it's while it was necessary for us to have to go through this exercise today to be able to provide appropriation, necessary appropriation to the University of Guam. Had the warnings been heeded about 3 years ago, this would probably had not been necessary. And it was about 3 years ago that we made we provided the warning, not just to the University of Guam, but to many other agencies, many of the agencies that are in dire straits right now, that mindful of your operation, mindful of the services that you need to be able to provide to the community, will you be able to sustain it? And resoundingly, it was yes. Don't worry. Last year, many of us sounded the warning bells. Be careful. Our economy is going to be going into crisis. It's headed that way. Where are we at today? I don't want to say that I was glad to hear, but it was just, many of the comments from our colleagues on this particular bill expressed concern about the fiscal cliff that our economy is in right now. We all recognize it's going to take a dive, but how deep of a dive is it going to take? But yet, warnings seemingly went unheeded. No, it won't happen. I'm just, for lack of a better term, glad that we had money. There was funding that was available to be able to address this, and maybe funding that's available to address other things. However, as was stated even by Mr. Byrne himself in today's presentation, uncertainty lies ahead of us just to get through this fiscal year. And yet, we have some members still in government that think everything is hunky-dory. They continue to run their operations, they want to be able to run it. I'm just going to remind my colleagues, several weeks ago, this administration just felt like giving out $10,000 pay raises again. And to the listening public, they have all the power and authority to do that. They don't have to come to us for that. But yet, we're the ones to be put to blame when we don't have the ability to be able to help agencies get the money so they can provide the services. Such as here. Yet they were comfortable in being able to provide the raises. And when we called out and we said, we've got to be mindful of how we spend, we were told we don't know what we're saying. We don't know what we're doing. What did we just do? Try to make up for where they neglected. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Excuse me, Speaker Blas. Senator Gumatato, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start with this, if I could, with respect to Bill number 58-38 relative to providing funding to the University of Guam in fiscal year 2025 and pursuant to section 1.02 G6C of the 38th Guam Legislature Standing Rules. I just want to inform you and the entire room and those watching that I currently serve as an adjunct instructor at the University of Guam. And I do support Bill number 58-38 COR. I wanted to make sure that I had and disclosed that to everyone that's watching. If I can, what we heard in the committee of the whole is a bit different tone that was shared in the public hearing on this measure back on February 28th. Clear what is a need and a want from the University of Guam. Sure, the implications in the upcoming 2026 budget cycle is going to be a ripple from this effort today. UOG has plans. UOG has people to execute those plans. And as what we've learned today is that UOG does have alternatives that they're going to have to tap for other matters, as was outlined throughout the day today, Mr. Chair. In 2025, UOG is going to have to maximize the utilization of so many things on campus to include existing facilities and other funding sources. It has to be where instruction is happening. And Mr. Chair, our students at UOG deserve better, and I see it every single time I'm on the campus. This legislature and the leadership of the University of Guam really cannot forget all of the support to different things on campus, maintenance of various CIPs based on the information that we have received to date here. I'm confident that the funds that we outline in Bill 58-38 will give the UOG Board of Regents and its president at the university some flexibility. I stand here in support of the university's accreditation process. That cannot be compromised. The student learning outcomes, those cannot be compromised. And support for higher education on Guam cannot be compromised. Recognizing that our students there are such a valuable asset to our community and to Micronesia as a whole. Bill 58-38 COR shouldn't be just to be, couldn't maybe administer, fund upward salary adjustments. And I agree with Senator Barnett. He mentioned it many times earlier. When we have other bigger needs in this government, we need to help resuscitate our tourism industry. We need to fix our public hospital. We need to put more police officers on our streets, and so much more. As a member of the Education Committee, I do support this bill, and really it is part of that effort to support our community. And I want to thank the Education Chairman and the good Senator from Barrigada, Vince Borja, for guiding this effort, and to you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership again in collaborating and ensuring that we're all doing our part here in the Guam Congress building to not compromise UOG. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak on Bill 58-38. Thank you so much.
Titus Masi, Senator Gumatato. Senator Chris Burnett, you may proceed.
Titus Masi, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to make comments on the bill. Absolutely correct. Appropriating this $5.7 million to UOG means that these funds are not going to be available for other priorities such as healthcare, infrastructure, or public safety, and of course, education. And so we must weigh very carefully any agency's needs to include UOGs against other competing demands that must be met for the betterment of our island and our people of Guam. And Mr. Chair, I don't envy your position because as we had discussed earlier a little more heatedly, you have drawn a very firm line in the sand about spending measures coming before this body, which I appreciate because, you know, for many years we haven't had that clear picture. But once you let one through, every other agency now is probably looking at today's proceedings, wondering how they can also, get appropriations outside of an emergency declaration or a call for emergency session. But the bill as amended, I'm more likely to support, Mr. Chair. And again, the tone, I just kind of want to comment on the tone from the president relative to how she discussed the students. You know, I just, and I'm sure maybe it's an academic thing, but you know, I just don't agree generally, and that, you know, students and our island's pocketbooks, they're not levers to be pulled on. You know, these are living, breathing human beings who you know, hopefully wake up every day and strive to better themselves, especially at the University of Guam. You know, that's such a fine institution that offers so many great programs and opportunities, not just for our young people. I know some older folks who attend the University of Guam, and you know, it's a very stellar institution. But you know, all too often, and I think we saw a little bit of that today, you know, when you come before the legislature, just give it to us in the black and white. You know, leave the politics and the funny games outside in the hall, because there's really no place for that here. You know, we're trying to make sure as a legislature that you know, every dollar that we send out there is going to be spent wisely. And so, yes, in a climate where you know, Ed Byrne got a $10,000 raise. You know, there's a bunch of raises going on with the cabinet members, and when the people hear of these things, when they hear the University of Guam coming before the body to ask for $5.7 million, and you know, mind you, the initial request was much higher, and Dr. Enriquez in the public hearing had basically said, honorable senators, this bill will only provide funding to the salaries and benefits of people currently employed at the university. I think, as the good senator from Talafofo had mentioned, there was a big departure from the comments and kind of the substance of where this money was going to go. You know, what was stated in the public hearing versus what was stated here today. But just generally, when I look at the spend plan for this funding from the University of Guam, I almost wish it was reversed. You know, so there's only $1 million being provided for capital improvements. And when I hear other things like the size of the student center has been decreased, so we give this $5.7 million, and of this 5.7 million, it's really 5.8 because it's, if you round it, this $5.8 million, 4.4 of that is going to salaries and benefits. And so even though we give this $5.7 million, it just doesn't seem like the lion's share of this funding is student-centered. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm just trying to really protect the students from further increases. And so that was kind of my reasoning in fighting for these tuition freezes, is if we're gonna give you $5.7 million and, you know, a lion's share of it is going to the vagueness that is accreditation-related priorities. I mean, they didn't even have the wherewithal to put salaries and benefits. Be honest with us, and that's why I really fought for these tuition freezes, because we're given, you know, nearly $6 million, and I'm not confident that enough of it is going to improve services for the students, Mr. Chair. So thank you again for the opportunity to make comments on the bill.
Excuse me, Senator Barnett, Senator Chalai, you're recognized.
So we began this session on this bill to give UOG 5.7 million more appropriations from excess revenues. We began this with a statement from the current OFB that we will not be spending any more excess money unless there is a declaration of emergency by the governor or the speaker, except for this bill. And then Mr. Byrne from Department of Administration, the governor's fiscal team, told us that we have $27 million available in excess money to spend. And he did not, neither did Lester Carlson, BBMR, well, he was on the radio. Both of them seem to be in agreement that we do not have to wait to spend the excess money and that we should be able to rely on the CRER. He also told us the government's not currently making a contingency plan for federal cuts and that we will deal with that in the future in the FY26 budget. And I find that a little bit concerning because if we have money today and we know cuts are coming in the future, or we could at least plan for that. But, and then kind of DOA is telling us today that this additional money going from excess funds to UOG, this is okay. And when we asked about what about GMH and the other critical needs, he was telling us he's going to see for himself whether GMH really is critical, and he's going to go there and look for himself, even though one of our colleagues gave GMH an F on their review, and GMH was just in here in an oversight hearing telling us that they took the $20 million in ARP funds away from GMH, and they did not have funds for CIP projects. And we have heard over and over again the list of CIP projects that GMH claims is critical, and that based on their operations, they're trying to pay for CIP projects as they go along, while they have $50 million, they say, need for operations alone. UOG, on the other hand, when we addressed their budget for FY25, they were given $6.6 million for FY25, more than FY24. That, according to OFB at the time, and BBMR, was going to cover salaries. And that's what they do for all the budgets. They cover salaries first, and then everything else is kind of like an, extra. Those are the basics that we try to cover, salaries. That's how it's represented to us. So these UOG salaries that we're funding today were actually funded by that budget, but UOG has used the money appropriated to them for FY25 to cover other things. And now they say that these salaries are not necessarily operational expenses, they are now accreditation-related priorities. And so I just find that while every other agency funds their salaries, they budget the appropriation, allocate it for their salaries, and then try to see what of the other expenditures can they deprioritize. It seems they have done the opposite and have come now to us and told us that what's critical and was not funded in their budget appropriation, which was even over what the governor had requested for UOG at the time by $4.2 million, that this is critical to them now to cover salaries. And the list that they gave us, these are they may call them accreditation-related salaries, but they're also basic UOG salaries, salaries for all of their programs, for the degree programs, for the students. And that they were deprioritized is very concerning to me, because every agency can learn this trick and come in here and say, okay, we are in an emergency because we didn't fund our salaries. We didn't pay our salaries. We're not going to pay our salaries because we're going to pay other expenditures. That is just my only concern. If they would just, I just feel like that's where I don't know. I just don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's very straightforward either.
Thank you, Senator Chalai. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it's, in listening to a lot of what was said today, and also what I'm hearing in the community, is that it's very hard to fund. I guess it's very hard to fund. I guess these high salary positions when we're looking at the hardship elsewhere. It's like the haves and the have-nots. That's what we've created in the government of Guam. And really, we still need to work on the solution of parity, and also the merit-based pay. It's unfortunate that we're seeing a lot of examples where people are getting paid so much and for less work. And this could be between different agencies. So it could be the same position but in different agencies, but one's getting paid more than the other. And not only that, the one that's getting paid less is doing more work. So when we're talking about autonomous versus non-autonomous or line agencies, for instance. But in this case, the pay plan really exacerbated one of the disparities in pay, where the rank and file workers versus the upper level paid professionals. And it's something that, because the pot of money is divided up amongst all of government, we all, though, work for the people. And I think that injustice has to be corrected. And it all ties back to how things are organized in different agencies. And the sense of urgency, I think, needs to be really, I almost feel like there's a lack of a sense of urgency about the state that we're in, because the national, what's happening nationally, we know is going to impact Guam. We experienced the positives of the economic support during COVID, right? And that definitely came to Guam, but we know, most of us can sense the uncertainties of what's happening in the States could also come to Guam. Very, very, that's very reasonable expectation. And so I think, yeah, we really need to light the fire with all the agencies to develop austerity plans. And, some agencies are used to doing that. And we need all agencies to be on that same understanding, I feel. So yes, they can come up with the plans, but we need it today. And so you're in no position envious. You're in a position of that I don't envy, Mr. Chair, because I know there's talk about Medicare being cut, right? There's talk about Social Security being cut, and these are huge, huge programs that our people rely on. And so we really, really need to have a contingency plan for the whole of government of Guam. And it will make us the stronger. To me, I feel it will make us stronger because it really highlights what is the need, what is the want, what is, not fair in this pay system. So it is an opportunity to make change in the right direction if we heed that call. So I'm always optimistic that we can make the changes properly. And I do, I think UOG is very lucky to have their foot in the door, in the front of the line, because I don't know what to expect later on. So, but I also believe that we come from a line of innovators, and I think that whatever challenges that we face, we can overcome. But I think we also need to be very mindful that we're doing it equally and for the benefit of all. So thank you.
Ms. Mossy, Senator Perez. Senator Parkinson, you recognize?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I imagine this has been a very long day, and so I will pass on my time.
Thank you for the brevity of remarks, Senator Parkinson. Senator Salas Montanani, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll also keep it short. Healthcare, education, public safety. If it doesn't have to do with these three things, I think other agencies that are watching this should have a heads up, because as we head closer to the budget season, I plan on bringing some scissors and cut, cut, cut. Thank you.
I'm sure that'll make a headline. Jesus Masi, Senator Salas Montanani. Yeah, maybe it'll take the pressure off me a little bit. Senator Lujan, I'll save you for last, Senator Borja.
Mr. Chair, I will pass as well. I think all has been said that needs to be said. And we know that, of course, there are tough times coming. Actually, the tough times are here. And they're probably going to get even tougher. So we get ready for this, the budget cycle that's coming around, because it's not going to be very pretty. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Han. Senator Tadegui, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, it's not easy here to say no to the University of Guam. And then again, you know, when they come to us and use students as like a leverage to try and get what they want, then it becomes a little bit easier. We sat here last term on a supplemental budget that was given to us by, if I'm not mistaken, BBMR came to us, and they're the one that took the University of Guam off that supplemental budget when they presented it to us. And we had asked them why. And they said because they had given the University of Guam funding already through the ARP funding, and also through the another grant funding for about $900,000. And that's why we all felt comfortable. They did get funding. On top of the fact that they got $6.6 million more in their budget than they did last year. Other than public safety, they were the only other agency that even got close to something like that. Now, I echo the sentiments of our good speaker, showing us the map of what's to come. And even making comments on making sure that we tighten our belts. It's very important that we do that. I mean, I think every one of us who hold committees are going to want to give our, chairs that we're chair of, are going to want to help those agencies that we oversee. But I'm already reaching out to them and telling them, you're going to have to live within your means. If the people of Guam have to live within their means, their household costs of groceries, gas, utilities, they make the cuts. So we're bound to do the same thing. And we can't take from Peter to pay Paul either and think that it's okay. Mr. Burns had said to us many times that we should have at least $20 million in excess revenue standing by, just in case. But he said that at a time when it wasn't so uncertain, like listening to him today. He's even more concerned about what's to come. And right now, we only have $27 million in excess revenue that can go just like that. And God forbid anybody starts sticking their hand into the rainy day fund to cover some of this cost and jeopardize that emergency fund. I'm going to stand here and fight against that, because I fought for how many terms? 4 terms to make sure that rainy day fund is replenished every budget year. And I believe by the end of this year, going into the next term, we should have, or next budget cycle, we should have at least about $100 million in there. But you all saw the news about FEMA being cut, how federal funds are being frozen in the case of an emergency, a typhoon that should hit us. We're really going to be in trouble. Not that we're already in trouble with certain costs, questionable costs in spending of federal money that we're still trying to reconcile. But moving forward, we do need to make sure that areas that really need the service for our people of Guam, of public safety, healthcare, and education are at the top of our priority. So I thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to say just a few words, and Viva Mes Chamorro. One more time. Viva Mes Chamorro!
Viva.
Okay. Si Diyos Masi, create a great weekend, everyone.
Diyos Masi, Senator Tadigui. Senator Calvo, you recognize.
Si Diyos Masi, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank my colleagues for their support to my amendment earlier. It only shows that compromise is necessary as a necessary component to progress and moving along. I rise today in support of Bill number 58-38COR, and I thank the author, Senator Vince Borja, for inviting me to co-sponsor this bill. Bill 5838 is about bridging part of that gap, you know, not to fund new initiatives or pet projects, but simply to keep the lights on, to retain faculty and staff, to maintain critical infrastructure, and to meet mandatory accreditation standards. UOG came before this body during the budget process with a request for over $44 million to operate at a level consistent with its mission and obligations. Unfortunately, only $34 million was appropriated, leaving a significant gap. This shortfall threatens core services that impact not only students and faculty, but the broader community that depends on the research, outreach, and workforce training that UOG provides. The way I see it, this is more than just a budget appropriation. This is an investment to our people, in our economy, and in the future of our island. Mr. Chair, we heard many voices during the public hearing. Faculty, staff, students, alumni, healthcare professionals, and members of the public. Their message was consistent. The University of Guam is hurting, and this funding is essential for it to simply stay operational and accredited. We received testimonies from Dr. Yvette Polino, the Dean of the School of Health, who spoke about the need to sustain Guam's only nationally accredited nursing program at the time when our island is facing a healthcare crisis. We heard from students who reminded us that UOG is not just Guam's university, it is the educational heart of Micronesia, serving students from across the region who cannot afford to go elsewhere. We heard from faculty like Dr. Zenia Sunshon, who urged us to prioritize local professionals in faculty hiring and to protect the hard-earned accreditation that gives UOG its credibility and our students their degrees. And we heard from UOG President, Dr. Anita Borja Enriquez, who laid out a clear, responsible spending plan for their appropriation, focused on maintaining essential operations and student services. Now, Mr. Chair, for nearly every graduate of UOG, this institution has been a ladder to opportunity It has launched careers in education, public service, business, science, and medicine, and so on. It has empowered single parents, military veterans, first-generation students, and working adults. When we fund UOG, we are not just paying for textbooks and payroll. We're actually funding dreams, aspirations, and the promise of a better tomorrow. So today I ask my colleagues to join me in passing Bill 5838. Let's send a clear message to our students, our faculty, and the people of Guam that we believe in public education, that we believe in UOG, and that we believe in investing in the future of our island. Sejus Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Susmasi, Senator Cabo. Vice Speaker Ada, you and Vice Chair of this committee, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to reiterate what everyone has already said, that we got some waters that we're going to have to navigate through in the upcoming months, perhaps. And working through the budget process is absolutely going to be something that all of us in this body is going to have to work together for. I know that perhaps started out with rough waters, but we want to see what we can do to calm those waters. And we're all in it, and we need to ensure that the end result is always for the people of Guam and our island. And I thank all my colleagues here for their input. Though we may not always agree, but at least we can disagree respectfully and work together with each other. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Susmasi, Mr. Vice Speaker. Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably going to make this really short because there's a ladies' conference going on next door. But I just want to say that in the efforts of collaboration and support, and yes, it's right. If we don't agree, let us agree to disagree with respect in the efforts of supporting the University of Guam, especially as it is the educational gem of this Pacific Blue Continent region. I want to say this is the right thing to do for our students, and I want to take the time to also thank the Oversight Chair on Education, because the partnerships and being the communication that we have for both higher education and the Department of Education, I think we're going to continue to move forward to give our students and our college students the right path forward as they look forward for their educational dreams to come true. So I support the efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Susmasi, Senator Muñoz Barnes. Senator San Augustine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in support of this bill. As we all know, the University of Guam plays a pivotal role as one of the only higher education institutions in the region, serving not only as a center for academic excellence, but also as a critical pillar for economic development and innovations here in Guam and across the Pacific. Mr. Chair, it was mentioned during this committee of the whole. Last year, if you all remember, my colleagues that have returned from the 37th, during our budget session, it was agreed upon that I will introduce a supplemental bill. That bill number is 355-37. It was to assist different areas of the government with excess general fund revenues. In that supplemental bill, $4 million was appropriated to UG in the measure. The public hearing testimony was all in support of the measure for every agency or departmental receiving appropriation. I remind my colleague, I was off island for personal reasons. But I watched the session. However, in the course of the session, Bill 355 was substituted on the floor by then Speaker Therese Terlai. The substitution removed the appropriation for the University of Guam. There was no discussion as to why or for what reason. The substitute bill removed UG. None. Other items were added, such as the GPA credit program, which resulted in the line veto by the governor. The intent of the $4 million appropriation would have benefited UG and would have avoided this bill today. Mr. Chairman, Earlier this year, I introduced Bill 38-38 and identified the 4 million again. Then I was approached by the chairman of education. He said he has a bill that will provide more funds and will be able to allow the university to have the flexibility to do what they need to do and get things done. So I said, I will support you 100%, and I will not ask that Bill 38-38 move any further. We must recognize that investing in the University of Guam is not just about supporting an institution, it is about investing in the future of our students, our workforce, and our island as a whole. As a co-sponsor of the bill, I strongly support Bill 58-38 COR as it reflects our ongoing commitment to education, innovation, and the future of our community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Snugstein. And I will now allow the author of the bill to close before we make a motion to rise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, after today's deliberations, one truth remains undeniable. The University of Guam is facing a financial crisis, and our action or inaction will determine its future. We have heard from UOG's leadership, faculty, and students about the urgent need for funding to sustain operations, maintain accreditation, and support critical infrastructure improvements. The numbers are clear, the testimonies are compelling, and the need is immediate. This is not just about balancing a budget. This is about investing in the future of our island. A strong University of Guam means a stronger workforce, a more resilient economy, and greater opportunities for our people. Every day we delay, the challenges UOG faces grow steeper, and the solutions become more costly. Bill 58-38 is a responsible step forward. It utilizes excess revenues to restore funding that was inadvertently removed, ensuring that the university can continue serving our students, our island, and our region. This is not a handout. This is a necessary correction that upholds our commitment to higher education. Think about it. Our island is short nurses. UOG School of Nursing can prepare our sons and daughters to fill this critical need in our community. Last week, we heard from the OPA and DOA that there's a critical need for finance professionals. Guess what, colleagues? The School of Business and Public Administration can help with that. Every year, we see record numbers of defense contracts and an increase in foreign engineers, high-paid professionals coming to Guam, accredited engineering degree to better their lives and productively contribute to our community. The Guam Department of Education is always short on certified teachers. The School of Education is the only solution to solve that problem. The Guam Police Department is short on officers. To help them retain officers, police officers are able to go to UOG, get a bachelor's or master's degree in criminal justice or public administration so they can be promoted and make more money to support their families. What I'm trying to get at here is that it's not UOG versus GMH, GPD, or any other agency. It's UOG as a solution for many of our island's problems and an opportunity for our students to better themselves, benefiting them, their families, our economy, our workforce, and our island as a whole. Every dollar appropriated to the university generates $3 of tax revenue to the government. What does that actually mean? It means that when I look at the people in this room, I see UOG alumni working hard to make this branch operate. I look at GDOE and I see an education system run by UOG alumni. When I look at DPHSS, I see nurses and health professionals that help our people every day, and they are UOG alumni. I see our law enforcement agencies keeping our people safe day in and day out, and they too include many UOG alumni. This island runs on UOG alumni, and we're very proud of that. All we're asking today is to continue that investment. Some think that a dollar spent on UOG is a dollar lost. I'm here to tell you that is absolutely not the case. A dollar spent here is a dollar invested on a UOG student because we work tirelessly every single day for our students, and I truly hope no one forgets that. I thank my colleagues for their engagement today, for their thoughtful questions, and for recognizing the gravity of this issue. I urge each of you to support Bill 58-38 to stand with our students and to reaffirm our commitment to the only four-year university in our region. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, colleagues. And I defer to you, Mr. Chairman, to rise out of the Committee of the Whole.
Senator Bohr, I'm going to take a 10-second recess real quick.
The motion to move out of the Committee of the Whole. Yeah.
I will now recognize Senator Borja for a motion to rise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I move to rise out of the committee of the whole.
With the recommendation
With the recommendations
to place Bill
to
38
place Bill 58-38 into the third reading file. As amended in the committee of the whole.
to the third reading file.
To the third reading file.
On that motion to rise, are there any objections? Motion carries. We are now going to rise out of the committee of the whole, and I will resume my chair.
Legislature's back in session. Senator Range, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to report back to the body that Bill number 58-38 COR and its actions was deliberated and amended in the Committee of the Whole and with the recommendation to be placed in the third reading file. So I make that motion at this time to place it in the third reading voting file.
On the motion to place Bill 58-38 COR as amended in the third reading file, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries.
Speaker.
Senator Barnett, I'll go ahead and recognize you.
Susan Masia, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. I'd like to, this time, motion to go back to motions.
Okay. There's a motion to go back to motions. Any objections? Any objections? Nope. Are there any objections? Can you go ahead and say?
I'm making the motion to go back to motions, Mr. Speaker, and if that motion passes, I'll then state the motion that I'd like to make, if that's okay.
There is an objection to go back to motions. It's non-debatable. Anybody? Okay. All those in favor of going back to motions, please raise your hand. Motion fails. Majority Leader, I recognize you to recess us until 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, motion to recess until Monday afternoon at 4 p.m.
Motion to recess Monday afternoon at 4 p.m. so we can proceed. All those in, okay, any objections? No objections. We are in recess until 4 p.m. on Monday. Thank you.